Hey, I'm doing it right now.
Send it out, okay?
I'm trying.
Okay. No information. Daniel said he spoke with him 10 minutes ago. He's in a meeting. And he had transferred the invite and I don't know if he's a hold of him. Aaron's gonna change it. Yeah. Barbara, are you on your computer? Yeah. Try and get into the Zoom, the new one that Aiden sent. Aiden's sending a new one. Oh, okay. Let's go to the stay on the phone. Okay. Hey, Aiden, let me know when you send it.
I did. I just did.
Hey,
Hey,
there we
Luke,
go.
how are I'm good.
Hey,
How are you?
good. How you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for taking the time to join us.
Yeah. Yeah. Are we live?
We are live. There's still people funneling in. So we might just give it a minute and we'll just jump right into things in just a sec.
Great. Sounds good.
Okay. Well, as people funnel in, we'll just get it kicked off and just jump right into things. So, Luke, thank you so much for joining us. Really excited to have you here.
Yeah.
Um,
Be here. Yeah. Super pumped.
yeah. So yeah, if you'd like to give the audience an introduction to yourself, Luke, I I don't believe we've met before, but I know a lot about you. You have a really interesting background. The story of what led you to here, I think, would be great. Yeah, if you'd like to give an intro and just let everyone know, your background and a little bit about SkyFi, and we'll just
Yeah.
get.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, so I'm Luke Fisher, the CEO and co-founder of SkyFi, based in Austin, Texas. Been running SkyFi for over 3.5 years, and obviously we'll talk a lot about that. Prior to all this, I spent 16 years active duty in the Army as an aviator. Most of that on the special operations side, based in Southern Virginia. Dozen plus deployments all over the world. Super fun, super challenging, and seems like a different lifetime ago. And then had the opportunity to go to Stanford Business School. Went back to active duty for a little while, another deployment or two, and then decided to join Defense Innovation Unit as a reservist, as an Army reservist. So I was there for about 4 years. So I finished out the 20 years of service there. The day job, I moved to the Bay Area and I worked at Uber for a couple years. So I was head of flight operations for Uber, which most people say that and are like, what do you mean head of flight operations for Uber? Uber's a car company and transportation company. But I was in a group called Uber Elevate, which was the electric aviation initiative under Uber, and essentially going, hey, if you take a segment of an Uber journey and put an electric, super efficient, super fast, and super quiet aircraft in there, you could expedite people's journeys, very quickly and very efficiently. So we were working on that. I led Uber's drone delivery initiative. I think we did the first food delivery in San Diego via drone to a customer flying McDonald's Happy Meal, which is super fun. And then decided to go work for an electric aviation company called Joby, based in Santa Cruz. They're one of the leaders in the industry, among many others, like Archer Aviation in the Bay Area too, where they're advancing this technology where you have these, multi-rotor, essentially tilt-rotor electric vertical and takeoff landing aircraft. So I led our government operations, traveled the bunch, all over the world with Uber and Joby talking about that. Then went to venture capital for a little bit because I wanted to start my own thing. Then moved to Austin, Texas, and then met my co-founder Bill Perkins of SkyFi, and here we are today. So yeah, happy to talk about any of that or all of it or none of it, and yeah, whatever you want.
Yeah, yeah. So SkyFi, the core platform, offers user-friendly access to satellite imagery and analytics on demand. I was playing around with it this morning, and yeah, just the free version is amazing. Really tempted to buy some of the images to get the high quality just because I want to see it, but I couldn't
Yeah,
really
do it.
figure
Yeah,
out
put down
what I
that.
wanted to use.
Yeah, put down that Balerion credit card and
Oh yeah,
spend away.
yeah. So yeah, it's super easy. It seems like any consumer can just go and check it out. I'm curious what how much of it is consumers and how much of it is government. I'm sure a lot of people want access to this for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah. So I'll say majority of our customers are now enterprise and government users. When we first started SkyFi, the whole mission, of what we do, well, right now we're an Earth intelligence platform. That's how we, view ourselves for, the world. And what that means is we deliver geospatial imagery and analytics through these scalable data platforms, plural, to enterprise customers, consumers, U.S. government, international governments all over the world. And but we started very differently, like most startups. We saw this problem where Bill Perkins, coming from the hedge fund world, was trying to buy satellite imagery, to make his trades, and you found that trying to buy 500K, $1 million worth of imagery was almost impossible. You're negotiating contracts for 6 months, talking to humans, flying for in-person meetings, where we live in a day and age where you can buy anything online, yet you had to talk to a human for months to get a satellite image. So decided to fix that. And we had a commercial focus first, like let's solve this consumer, easy to access, problem. And we did that, but then have since expanded on and, have multiple government contracts. We built platforms for Planet, for Maxar, now called Vanter, by the way, as of a couple days ago. And a couple others that are under apps like ISI US, which isn't launched yet, but we just announced that the other day. And then, a whole bunch of enterprise users, and then again, consumers on the platform. So it's a little bit of everyone, or a
Nice.
lot of everyone, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious, like, the technology kind of existed, and I'm sure there was a bottleneck that wasn't being met. Can you just sort of walk us through the evolution of SkyFi's platform, like from concept to now, where you have thousands of users and all governments checking it out and using it? Tell us about how you were able to hop into this market, take satellite images and really make it accessible and much better than what was traditionally had before.
Yeah, it's really about the team and the technology. So you're right. The technology has existed for years to enable people all over the world to access imagery and analytics through multiple different vendors across the world. And so when we looked at first the problem, like why is it so hard? Why does it take months to negotiate contracts? Why does it take, multiple phone calls and emails and, explaining your use case over and over and over again, and explaining how much you're going to spend next year when you may not even know? And it's because we had this thesis where, most satellite companies, analytic companies still to this day have modeled their sales cycle after their largest customer, and that's the US government. So these sales cycles model the US government acquisition cycle. So that's painful and burdensome for the right reasons for the most part. But we looked at it and be like, it can be faster. So, we were coming at it from a customer angle. My tactical and operational military experience, and then Bill on his the hedge fund side from the commercial side, and said it has to be faster and it has to be easier. People want answers for it. So we built a team that didn't come from the geospatial industry like ourselves. Our core engineering team was led by ex-Uber engineers, and it still is. Our CTO Julian, ran the Bulgaria Uber office for years and years. My COO Mike was coming from an AI company after his Navy helicopter time. Kate, our head of government, was at InQtel, running NRO portfolios before this. Our new, our marketing people at that time were coming from the marketing industry, not from the geospatial industry. So we built this team that understood what products mean and what scalability means to build a technology. So what didn't exist could have, but we built it. A lot of it was API connections. You can't scale a business, across the globe doing phone calls and emails. So that's what we, leveraged was API connections to satellite providers and analytic providers all over the world to rapidly get information in people's hands. So then we built the web and mobile applications to support that. And again, the mobile application was very interesting. People, everybody on the planet almost has a cell phone on them. So that is where your customers are. So give them that access there. And we find most enterprise users and government users are still on web. But again, why limit the access to just desktops? So we have these web and mobile applications and have built platforms all over the world. But again, it was through the team. We're at the Series A stage right now, and up to this point, it's about the vision and the team. So we're very successful at building the right team that understood speed, and we're able to overtake a lot of what we say is this like legacy industry that moves very, very slow at the speed of government for a lot of reasons, and we're just able to have customers in every country we can legally sell to within weeks of launching our platform.
Got it. I'm curious, what are the opportunities governments and consumers are seeing with using SkyFi? Like, there's real estate, mining, agriculture, defense. Can you break down, what the main ones are, what some of the most interesting ones are, and maybe some untapped opportunities people can use with Earth observation?
Yeah, for sure. So big for us, because it's our backgrounds a little bit with, Bill and his the hedge fund days are financial institutions, hedge funds. They're looking at that, chasing that alpha, that little bit of speed and insight into various markets, oil and gas, agriculture, after disaster relief, like what is going on. So the hedge fund and the financial institutions are very, I'll say price insensitive because it's all relative to the value that they're going to get. So what may be, a multi-$1,000 image that may be expensive for one individual is budget dust for others, if they're making multiples higher off of that trade. Agriculture is a big one for us. We've got some, massive agriculture companies that use us. Real estate and insurance are growing, especially when you look at things you can do now with disaster relief, post hurricanes, and tropical storms to see, hey, do you need to send in thousands of people to estimate the damage, or do you need to send in hundreds after you look at, the actual extent of the damage using before and after imagery with it? So those are some of the, the industries. Mining's a big one. I mean, really on and on and on. And what I really like is we view ourselves as a true dual use company where we're serving, government and commercial customers essentially through the same platform, where you often see companies that say they're dual use, but they really are a defense company and they're only serving defense, where, there's benefits of doing both, rapid iterations on the commercial cycle with customers where that feedback is rapid, and the fault on the government is like, you may get feedback once or twice a year from a government customer if you're building and using milestones. So that's how we leverage a lot of those, building and, what to build. But for interesting use cases, I'll just name a few without the companies too. We've had, a pool manufacturer, one of the largest in the US, look at us and go like, hey, I can use you guys to see who has pools in what neighborhood and who doesn't, and then target market those that don't. With big livestock, like I'm based in Texas, a lot of cows around this area. They're looking at feedlots of what cows are standing versus laying down, meaning the ones that are laying down are underfed. So they have to see if their feed is getting, appropriately monitored and distributed by the farmers. And then it was funny. We talk about it once in a while, like wedding planners. We've taken some really cool shot. Not that wedding planners are any sizable amount of our budget, but we timed a shot using Planet for somebody last year at Rockefeller Center, I think it was like 10:19 a.m. The weather was perfect. Everything worked out. Where that individual proposed to, is now, she said yes to, by the way, which was good. Proposed that his now fiance at 10:19 a.m. and Rockefeller Center. So it was cool. And then everything in between. Obviously, a ton of military use cases and intelligence community use cases where the commercial satellite industry, in a lot of ways, is outpacing government technology, because now we're living in this day and age where there's more satellites being launched, more analytics being created, and the value we bring is it's this one-stop shop that allows all those users to access it very quickly.
Now, your platform integrates data from optical, SAR, hyperspectral, all those other sources. Can you explain sort of how you decide and maintain which ones you'd like to use, which ones are better for what use cases? Just looking at the website, I see just really high quality images, and I'm curious, with these different types of images, what might be the use for those? Why would someone want one rather than another?
Yeah. So we, initially we knew when we started the company, we had to have, enough of a database of imagery providers. So we just had a couple providers, like some of the big names. But now the real answer is we let our customers decide. We get customer feedback, and that is one thing I think we do better than anyone, is we listen to customers and we take feedback as necessary, not as a nice to have. So we're constantly, asking our current customers, what do they want more of? New customers, like, why are you coming to SkyFi? What's your needs? So we really put a lot of time into our customer support side of the house. And so that's how we continue to go like, hey, we need some analytics. Hey, we need some, vegetation analysis or your maritime domain awareness for it. And we now have, the largest constellation of assets in the world, because we have partnerships with, every major company out there, Maxar, Planet, ICEYE, Umbra, Satellogic, like you name it. And we're always looking for the new ones too. There's, companies that are about to launch that we have partnerships with, or companies that maybe have one or two satellites in there. Where a lot of uses right now is electro-optical, because there's a lot of electro-optical satellites out there, and a bunch of use cases, change detection, everything I was talking about before. I'm really excited about SAR and hyperspectral, because now we're entering this industry where you need computers to do the work for you. And that is where you can extract a ton more data out of these images, or data, than you can necessarily with other, electro-optical imagery. Now there's trade-offs back and forth with pricing and availability, but where our SAR partners, Umbra and ICEYE, are tremendous, both government and commercial. Because again, it's all weather, 70% of the earth is usually cloudy. So you need, stuff that sees through clouds. But I'll say, I think the world isn't really ready yet, and it's going to be very surprised. Well, it's ready, but it's not really noticing what hyperspectral imagery will do. There's very, very new satellites out. They're very difficult and technically, sophisticated to operate. But I think of hyperspectral as a barcode from space. You can detect anything, because now you're looking at, this wavelength that the human eye can't see. And so you're able to reference a database and determine what's out there, whether that's minerals or Chinese PLA helmets or Russian camouflage. Like you can just detect anything now, and there's really nowhere to hide, which is really, really interesting coming up. So again, it's new, it's not widely available, but the stuff we've seen, hyperspectral is literally, I think, going to change a lot of industries and how they operate.
Got it. Interesting. I guess from an investor's perspective, what makes SkyFi uniquely positioned in this new space economy compared to, other Earth observation companies and startups?
Yeah, it's our approach based on speed. I think we realize that. There's no real US competitor here. There's a lot of companies going after the defense market, but they're missing out on the commercial side of the house. And what we take an approach is this provider agnostic Earth intelligence platform, meaning, we don't, you know, segment our customers and only let them buy certain things. We go like, hey, the world is yours. Like, you can, for the first time ever, ask questions of the earth. You can get visibility into the earth like never before. And then it's the team. We run a capital efficient business. We've been able to fundraise well. But then it's looking at that, the product focus, I think, because I think as you get into the geospatial world, you find, and I've seen, most competitors out there, and I use that loosely, have been built by geospatial people for geospatial people, where those are not necessarily the customers. The customers are the decision makers, the managers, the hedge funds that candidly don't care about the imagery. I don't know how many times I've had, companies, both commercial and government, come to us and be like, we know about SkyFi. We don't care about imagery. We just want the answers. And I think too often in the industry, they're, talking about resolution and revisit rate and, nanometers, where it just goes over people's heads, where you go like, you can determine the amount of change in an area and make a trade-off of this. Like that's the answer that people are looking for. So we differentiate in that way. But again, big emphasis on the team, where, it's scalability and the technology we built and the engineers that we have. And what we're not yet released, but building for some government customers, is our capability with AI is fascinating to me for that. So it's just all packaged up, into those areas. But I say it's the speed, it's our technology, and now to the data moat we have, because we've got the largest constellation of assets in the world, and most companies have their satellites data, and they know what those customers want. We've got all of it, so it's incredibly valuable.
And I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking, where we were 5 years ago with satellites. I mean, since Starlink came online in 2019, they have more satellites up in space than any other company. It's like 8,000, I think, at this point. I don't know.
It's crazy.
Always growing. And it just seems like so many of these satellites are going up, and they all have, cool, unique, custom features. What can we anticipate in the future with this industry scaling so fast and so much dramatic change and improvements being made almost monthly, while at the same time, launch to orbit is dropping dramatically in price?
Right. Yeah, I think the two big things that customers care about are the cost and the speed. And we're going to see, continual drastic improvements in both of those. Speed, in the 60s, it took months and months to get imagery. We were dropping canisters from, space and picking them up with planes when it was still very secret. Now we're at the point where you can push a button on your iPhone and task a satellite, So we're that evolution right there, but that exponential curve and how speed of delivery is dramatically increasing. We still are waiting at some instance, hours and days. And obviously if the weather's bad, you're going to wait longer for electro-optical, to capture imagery. But now we're seeing tests in minutes, from request to delivery. And that will only continue to get faster and faster when you think about laser link communications on orbit and how that beams down data, and new ground station companies coming out that are expediting that as well. So that is getting faster and faster. And then like you said, the launch costs are decreasing. It's easier to get to space, which means there's going to be more innovation in space, and that just gets passed to the customers. Where we're soon approaching where college kids are going to be able to build satellites in their universities and launch them for nothing, virtually, for that, and that's good for the world, too, because now we're I'm a big believer in the more we can bridge what's coming across the earth and make it visible, to all humans, kind of realizing we're all on this planet together, I think is more beneficial. And that's part of our mission too.
Yeah, so I'm thinking about it like, really fast images. Like I could go out in my street and wave to the camera and get an image maybe. But then I start thinking scarier thoughts of other countries using this, adversaries using this, warfare, you know, using this. How do you mitigate those risks? And what does the
Yeah.
future kind of look like with that now capable with just about anyone being able to get their hands on it?
Yeah, to your last words there, just about anyone to be able to get your hands on it. One thing that we put a lot of time and money to is the diligence on who can purchase, because not everyone can. We run it's transparent to the customer, but diligence check to make sure we're screening. So we're not, we're U.S. entities, so we're screening OFAC lists and UN lists where people and entities are prohibited from buying, because we don't screw that up. And it's very, very important that as the industry, we put a lot of work to that. So, we're proud of the work, our KYC processes, we have multi-step authentication and verification of who's coming across this platform. And if there's any question, we don't sell because we can't sell for it. So that's part of the risk mitigation. I think we do that better than most. We actually had some satellite companies, big companies, use our process that we created, because we knew, having the largest constellation of assets in analytics in the world, that it was important and we would have a lot of customers. So therefore, the protection of that data is very important as we get those licensing out. Then yeah, across the world, we just stay in tune with rules and regulations and follow them, and encourage others to as well. But space is the wild, wild west. From the warfare side, the acts by China and Russia, and a lot of them aren't even reported, are pretty scary. Because we have certain morals and ethics as the most powerful nation in the world, being the U.S. We have to uphold that. But if others aren't, and I mean, just think of the damage that one satellite can do in the debris fields if it no longer exists or blows up. It can take out constellations. And there's not much you can do on orbit for that. So I know the government is putting a lot of work into that.
And as things progress with AI, I know companies with taking, very high quality photos and just using an AI touch up to make them look even better. I see that being, continuing in the future and growing quite a bit, but I'm worried that, how do we even know if some of them will even be real at one point? Like there could be like a hallucination, and it's just at one point, like, how can we even tell?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the other thing too, for the processing that we do and the assurance of the data, and our chain of custody from capture through provider through our pipes. We're aware of every step of that, and put a lot of cyber protections on that so no one can disrupt that. With that said, there's always going to be bad actors out there. From other companies, other nations, where there's fake imagery out all the time, with even this week with OpenAI's Sora 2, the video editor, which is amazing. Like you can do anything with that and it looks so real. I mean, and that is video. It is an interesting world, and scary, where, it will be easy to trick. And we've all been tricked at some levels, on Twitter or Instagram or LinkedIn, thinking something's real, and falls in that category as well, where there's a will, there's a way to manipulate, but not with, the data we have as we deliver it, based on our chain of custody and cyber, protections and processes and procedures that we have.
I've seen a lot of news, you guys, about partnerships and making. It always seems like some other companies just taking you on or your partnership. And I was trying to catalog them before this, and it just seemed like a lot. And I was hoping you could just give us a high level overview of some of the people you're working with and the partnerships you've had in the past year, even.
Geez, yeah. I mean, we've got so many partners. I mean, there's the big names, of course, that everyone recognizes. Maxar, now Vantor, which we'll have to caveat that because when people say Vantor right now, people are like, "Who is that?" And you have to be like, "Oh, it's Maxar." It's Maxar, it's Planet, it's ICEYE, Umbra, Pixel, Geosat, Satellogic, Spire, like Vexo, like, and a dozen plus more. Smaller companies like Wyvern. Axel Space, we have balloon companies, Urban Sky, Near Space Labs, just on the provider side, that covers just a short list that covers, satellite companies, stratospheric balloon companies, airplane sensor companies. The only thing we haven't really leveraged too much is drones because I think satellites are starting to compete with drones for the coverage and cost. Then on the analytics sides, we've got a bunch. I mean, almost too many to name. It's Astera and Sateem and Geospatial. They go by GTA. Like a couple of professors that have some unique hyperspectral capabilities. Pictera, on and on. So our takeaway is, we partner with just about everyone as long as they have good quality data, imagery, and analytics, and we let our customers decide. And the customer feedback is great that we get because some people, are very, very good at very niche capabilities and may not have the marketing side of it or the budget to expand out globally, and we can help them do that.
Got it. Just how high of quality photos are are possible right now? Can you see exactly the make and model of a car? Can you read the license plate? Like, where's the technology right now, and where's it going to be in the next few years?
Yeah, I haven't seen anything on the commercial side that can read license plates. With those partners I listed, it comes with, the airplane companies like Vexel, where you can see make and models of cars because now you're down at that like 7 centimeters of resolution per pixel, which is just very, very good. Where you're definitely competing with drone level top-down look. Satellites go up from there, 30 centimeters up to meters, where again, it just depends on the price and the availability. And it's going to continue to increase. Apparently, from satellites, the atmosphere, you can only get down to 4 centimeters, apparently, based on, some physics. There's some obviously phenomenal government technology out there that most people, don't and shouldn't have access to unless they're in the military intelligence community. But yeah, it's with AI, back to your point, using super resolution and AI enhancements, you can get a lot of data out of that, even at the 30 centimeter, which is, fantastic imagery for, I would say, most use cases.
Gotcha. And with the increasing geopolitical importance of this data, I'm curious how SkyFi approaches working with the government, defense sectors, both in the United States and internationally. Um, I see like that's big opportunity, and also can kind of be, you know, a bit iffy.
Yeah, I don't think it's iffy at all. I mean, we're, at SkyFi, I've got employees all over the world in NATO countries. We are, definitely patriots. We're a U.S. entity, and, support the U.S. government and our allied governments with the technology they need, because, it's not just about, warfare. Most of what the military does, their mission is to prevent it, through being, very strong, and so the better the technology is, the better the strength is, and it's a deterrence. So, that's what we, really believe in. And, obviously I was in the military and, a bunch of my team members at SkyFi were, served as well. And so, we're not shy about saying we support the U.S. government and the technologies and making sure that U.S. government and allied governments have the best technology, period, over adversaries. So we put a lot of time and work, and the government is a great customer of us, or I'll say governments are a great customer of us, and we want to continue that relationship. Because where I see, problems similar to when I was at Uber, when the small drone initiative really caught the U.S. government and a lot of militaries off guard, where you have these super cheap DJI drones being flown by ISIS in Iraq, and you don't have any way to defeat them. I remember sitting in an operations center researching birds of prey like hawks, like to buy some to defend against drones. And so the U.S. was caught off guard, where we don't want that to happen with satellite technology. I say all the time, my teenage daughters can task a satellite eating their breakfast in the morning with what we built at SkyFi, yet soldiers on the battlefield right now cannot for the most part. So we want to get that technology into the hands and make sure the military, has, the best advantage ever over anything, because that strength through deterrence is very important.
Uh, I have a question here from the audience. And for anyone in the audience, feel free to type your questions in and we'll get to them. The question is, since you're customer focused, how do you balance the leading edge science of image science with the practical use case for current customer demands?
How do we balance latest? I mean, it's really we want to experiment and get it out there. So if there's a leading, maybe it's a very niche capability from a very small provider where it's very heavily science focused. And I'll use a hyperspectral example. We've got, very cutting edge algorithms for hyperspectral imagery. The individual you work with, need the more resources of a big company like us. So we experiment that with our existing customers that have been, needing this data. And so that's how I think the question is phrased, like, how do we balance it? We don't, necessarily mass produce everything, go like, hey, world, here it is. We want to test it out in a prototype version first to see what, the strength and weaknesses are of that technology. And then we'll launch it, to the world. I think that's what the question was.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess can you share some of the vision you have over the next 5 years? Any specific technology developments or market expansions you're particularly excited about?
Yeah, I mean, our market expansion, we currently have customers in every country in the world we can sell to, so 180 plus countries. So we're there now. It's about deepening those relationships. The next step, 5 years is a long time, and but where I see us being is, right now, the geospatial front door for the world. With our government capabilities and platforms that we've built for multiple governments that we don't talk about much. Our white labels with Planet and Vantor/Maxar and ICEYE US that are out there, then our SkyFi platform. We've got, some of the largest distribution in the world, because we're making those bets on, multiple business angles for it. So we'll continue that, and we'll continue. There's a bunch more white labels in the works too that we haven't announced. We'll continue that expansion. But where I see it going for customers, both government and commercial, is it's not about imagery. It's just about answers. And I see us, integrating more data sources, more diverse data sources, and being that ultimate answer for people. You combine that with AI, that is where things really get interesting, for the stuff we built. So now you're getting into the world of semantic inputs, where you're going, show me the maritime situation of the South China Sea over the last week and task me the latest image in the future so I can keep track of, maritime vessel ABC. That is very real technology that exists, some of it that we're building. And that's where I see it going, where you're going to be able to use geospatial technology and get answers without even realizing maybe you tasked a satellite. Maybe you got a historical image from 2 years ago and you're applying an analytic from both maritime and, some sort of other analytic to get a solution for you, where the output is just an answer, and that's where I think the industry is lagged a little bit, is focusing on the answers. And again, back to my other point, they're too focused on building still, because it still is a challenge. And where we're going in 5 years, very similar to how big companies like Uber uses geospatial technology like crazy. Users of Uber use geospatial technology like crazy, but they don't know. They're just pushing a button on a phone and a car picks you up. But all the orchestration behind that's where I see us going, providing answers, multiple data sources for the world.
Gotcha. Yeah, growing. Everything about this is just growing. I'm curious if there's any regions or markets that have surprised you most with its appetite for tasking data.
Yeah, I mean, our growth in the Asia Pacific market is really interesting. A lot of it is focused on, potential conflict involving China in the future. So, I see, a lot of entities being interested there. That wasn't necessarily where I thought we would be going, but we go to where the market demand is. Initially we thought like, hey, this U.S. business would be very, very valuable because we're a U.S. entity. We've got strong footholds in various markets here. But just that international expansion in Asia Pacific was very interesting for us. So I see a lot of growth and opportunity there.
Yeah.
And I think, well, I'll continue to add. I think I see, the European market, hamstringing themselves a lot of the over-regulation for, I mean, most industries, and I think they're setting themselves back, unnecessarily to appease regulators as opposed to most of the rest of the world. So I see the European side just continuing to lag behind.
Uh, you were mentioning earlier about the team just being stellar and rock stars. I'm curious about the core of that team, where it started and how it's scaled out, and where a lot of assignments get tasked and where you need a lot of manpower versus where you need a lot of the technical side of things.
Yeah, well, on the early side, we were, heavy on engineers. We had to build the thing, build the web and mobile application and build it for scale. So, get back to the early Uber engineers that built out that core team. Obviously we've expanded out and we've hired from, I mean, various industries. I think just last couple handful of hires. I mean, it's coming from, Maxar and NGA and MasterCard and AI companies. So we really, focus a lot on the engineering talent and building for speed. But that core team too was setting up, the basic operations, the basic government footholds, the basic procedures for program management. So hired from, largely from, within the network that I knew, having been in the military and Uber and Joby and venture capital. I had some pretty good connections, and then leveraging that network really helped. And where we're going, it's going to be more of the same. Now we're bringing in a little bit more expertise in geospatial, even though most of us become experts in the geospatial world. But for example, our new CRO, Andrew Canales, joined us after having spent 22 years at Maxar and every iteration, name change before Maxar, now Vantor, was out there. So we've got these deep expertise too. And so we're leveraging more on the sales side coming forward, both government and commercial.
Got it. I have another question here from the audience. How do you carve out a niche differ slash differentiate from other players, Dante, Little Place, etc.?
Yeah, most of my CR are pretty niche focused on either government or niche capabilities focused on AI. And where I see weakness in most competitors is very narrow focus, no scale, and very slow moving. Where that is not how you build a massive tech company, and that's our goal. But the other side too is our data moat that we've got bigger than anyone. I see competitors coming up, and saying, hey, they're maybe a geospatial marketplace or a reseller. Then you look an inch deep and it's all free imagery, which is, serves some use cases, but not all. But the real work is the partnerships. How do you convince partners that they can trust you without getting in such a, because all satellite companies will gladly partner and sell data to new companies, just so they can sell data. But, how do you make that a win-win for both sides? And I think a lot of companies are lazy on their business development side of the house and will sign up for massive deals. And I know some particularly, and then they just put themselves in financial corners where they can't get out of it and can't sell enough data for it. So that's where I see some differentiation. And again, what's really interesting too is being a true dual use company. The government can help bridge that valley of death as the commercial market grows. And I think that's what we're seeing on the commercial side, where the commercial market is growing. Government's still the biggest customer. And if you're not leveraging both sides of that equation, it's very tough to, succeed and scale.
Uh, Curious, looking ahead, what headline would you be most proud to see about SkyFi in 2026?
Oh boy, that SkyFi is the most trusted Earth intelligence platform in the world with, the most customers and, trusted among enterprise and government users in the world. Something like that would be pretty decent.
Like that. Um, I'm just thinking of all the individual use cases, both commercial and consumer and government. And I don't know how much you can talk about that, but I'm curious. SkyFi been, you know, how often, or I don't know if you can talk about it, do you find maybe a secret military base or submarine that shouldn't be somewhere where it is, or some
Yeah.
type of James Bond type thing? Because I feel like something around the world, there's always something happening, and you got eyes on it.
Yeah, it's interesting because we're not the end users. We facilitate it, and we hear about it because that's another thing. A strength of ours is, most companies, if you try to buy data or analytics, they'll say like, have a contact us button and explain your use case and contact sales, and you have to go on and on, explain what you want to gonna do with their imagery and data. Then they may or may not approve you. For us, we have our KYC and diligence processes, but usually we find out secondhand on socials for something that hits. And there are entities out there that have tracked various military assets as they're going before strategic strikes, and it's all out there and it's all open source. There's a big OSINT community, open source intelligence community out there that is what they do. They're explorers out there, and they use us and all within the bounds of regulations and advertising it to the world. And it's good because then it allows, militaries and, security professionals to adapt their tactics. The more they know about what can be done from space, the more they can counter it if they need to. But yeah, it's fun seeing it. There's, a lot of stuff in the South China Sea gets reported under, illegal fishing, which China has a huge maritime fleet that they say is commercial, but really it's defense. We've done a lot of reporting in the Philippines through the Gordian Knot Center out of Stanford, where they're looking at incursions into the economic exclusion zones by China against the Philippines and the intimidation factors that they do, and that's gotten 60 Minutes coverage. And on and on. So I'd say that's the most interesting to me because it's just blatant stuff that China does against a lot of friendly nations out there that needs to be exposed more. So, but yeah, it happens all the time, pretty frequently.
Nice. Um, if you could wave a magic wand to solve one industry problem overnight, what would it be, and why hasn't anyone cracked it yet?
Yeah, it's well, I'll say we've cracked for the most part. It's the licensing. It's the boring stuff where we worked very hard to have one end user licensing agreement for our customers. Back to the laziness with competitors, there's some out there where, and you go to buy image, you have to scan through like a dozen end user licensing agreements. It's just laziness. So if I had the magic wand, I would say everyone should be Creative Commons. The data can be used and proliferated, more freely. And that's the way you grow the industry. That's the way you grow analytic companies and getting the data in the hands. Umbra is a really good example of that Creative Commons license for it, where very important to get that out there. So that's the one thing which probably no one would say is like the magic wand thing. Is that licensing because it's super painful and we put a lot of work to it. Our in-house counsel Karina is like the wizard. Basically has a magic wand. Is convinced like our licensing agreement to be what it is. But I'd say second to that is the awareness. We come across customers all the time that have no idea you can use analytics and geospatial technology to solve problems. And they would save tons of money. I talked to a company that spends tens of millions of dollars a year on roof inspections, where they can spend a fraction of it, on satellite technology and get much faster and more efficient results. And it's just, that's part of our mission though, is to educate people. And so that's what we do. So that's the second magic wand. I'd be like, everyone knows about SkyFi and how easy it is.
Gotcha. Um, what's been your biggest aha moment since founding SkyFi that you've personally had?
um, it's all about team. Yeah, it really is. The people, at startups and the culture you build from day one will make or break the company. Where I think a lot of maybe less experienced entrepreneurs, maybe less on the leadership side, kind of put that in the back behind and be like, nah, we need to raise money and who cares? Let's just hire people, put butts in seats so we can type on keyboards. It's that hiring process is very, very important. It's lessons I took from special operations days and Uber. Uber had a very good hiring process. Somehow I made it through the doors, but it is a very, very important thing to do. And so it's that people and how you bring people in at the right way are detrimental to the company, especially at that pre-seed, seed, and Series A stage, and beyond. So that's it. Where I was like, "Yep." You read books on culture and values and vision, and you like until you experience it, you don't realize how important it is.
Gotcha. Um, okay. Well, I think we went over most all things I wanted to talk about.
Great.
Luke, thanks for sharing your story and giving us a deeper look into SkyFi and telling us all about the industry. Uh, got a room full of people here who are interested. Anything you'd like to share before we close?
Yeah, go check out app.skyfi.com and yeah, let us know your feedback because we're always listening.
Fantastic. Um, everyone who attended, thank you so much for joining. This has been recorded and we will try to get the recording out. Luke, this has been fantastic. I feel like I could just talk with you for hours. So much interesting things going on. But yeah, thank you again for your time and for coming in today and sharing.
All right. Thanks. Thanks, everyone. See ya.
Thank you. Bye.